Hi guys, welcome to my presentation today. Welcome to Dublin Comic Con. Thanks so much for coming. I will be doing a presentation today on Baldur's Gate, and it is called Baldur's Date, a cinematic perspective on the romance in Baldur's Gate 3. So, a quick little synopsis on what I'm going to be speaking about today. We're going to do a little introduction on myself and on the studio. Talk about Larian Cinematics. What is it we actually do? What is our role? Then move on to storytelling through romance. So obviously this is a really important part of romance and part of the reason why it's so important for people as well when they're playing the game. Then I will do a bit of an in-depth dive to one companion's romance scene. And then how do we gamify it? So obviously Baldur's Gate 3 is a very non-linear and reactive game. So how do we up our cinematics to work for a game that size and scale as well? So a little bit on myself, a little character profile, if you will. My name is Ellen Grant, and I was born and bred in Dublin, Ireland, so I am an Irish game dev. I went to Ballyfermot College originally. I graduated from there in 2018, and I studied animation originally. I started in Larian Studios around 2019, so I'll do a little evolution. If I was in Baldur's Gate, I guess I'd be a little barbarian dwarf. And since then, I've worked there for 5 years, and I am now a lead cinematic artist in the studio. So, Studio Dublin. Originally, Larian Studios is based out of Ghent in Belgium, but we have 6 studios across the world, and you can see our little logos down in the bottom left. So we have Ghent, Belgium. We also have Quebec in Canada, Dublin, Ireland. Then we also have Guildford in the UK, Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and then Barcelona in Spain as well. So a lot of people today have been kind of intrigued and didn't know that Larian worked in Ireland. So yes, we do work here. We're located in Portobello in town and just off of Camden Street. And we have a team size of about 60 people. So that's out of about 450 people worldwide. 60 of them are based here. We have many different roles in the studio, but our main sort of thing that we focus on in the Dublin studio is we are the hub of storytelling. So that means we have a lot of writers, scripters, and of course the cinematics team as well. So there are other roles in the studio, but I would say that that's kind of the main stuff that happens in Studio Dublin. So Baldur's Gate 3. Has anyone here played Baldur's Gate out of curiosity? Yay! Okay, quite a lot of people. That's great to see. I'll give a little synopsis of Baldur's Gate just in case you haven't played it. But obviously, this has been a huge undertaking for us, and it has done exceptionally well in the last year. It's really great to see so many people playing it here as well. So thank you guys for enjoying the game. So it is a top-down, turn-based, party-based RPG. It's a fantasy role-playing game, and it's based in the Dungeons and Dragons universe. It was in production for around 6 years altogether, so a game this size is obviously quite a big feat. This is normal for a game that has hundreds of hours of content, and we originally did early access in November of 2020. So we released it out to the public. People were able to play it, give some opinions and feedback to us, and then we finally released the full game in 2023. It was released on PC in August of last year, then PlayStation 5 and Mac in September, Xbox in December, and it has just been overwhelming, the response to it. But yeah, we are on many different consoles, so if you haven't played it, I highly recommend you pick it up sometime. Then in terms of cinematics, there are 174 hours of cinematics in the game. Now, when we initially released this amount, people were kind of thinking, holy crap, am I going to sit through 174 hours of cinematics in one sit through? Definitely not the case. It's a very non-linear game, and depending on the choices you make and the paths you go down, it's going to change and adjust. So you'll never get all of that in one sitting, but it does prove just how important cinematics is to the gameplay. It's a huge part of the game. It's all about story at the end of the day and how you want to play. So yeah, cinematics was definitely a very important part to that. So what is the cinematics team at Larian? I put it in quotation marks here just because the next slide, you're going to see a lot of lovely faces. They're not all technically the cinematics team, but they all help create the final end product that is the cinematics. So just a couple of the teams that I have up here. We have cinematics, cinematic animators, our great production team, storyboarding, mocap. If you go further up the chain, you have our amazing writers and scripters who write the scenes and make sure that they play properly in the game. And then further downstream, you have Tech Anim, who make the rigs and the face effects and all that work in the game. And then you also have VFX and SFX towards the end and music. So it's a huge team, and this is not even all of Larian. You could say that every part of Larian is somewhat interconnected, but I just added these guys here. I'm very small up there in the top right, left. I can't tell right from left, top left corner, but ultimately this is a huge undertaking. So just a big congratulations to all the devs who worked on this game. So thank you guys. So what do cinematics actually do? Well, I kind of like to think of it as this guy playing with this car and lighting things on fire, but we work on the in-game dialogues and cutscenes. We stage the characters, so we position them spatially in the world, and we control all of the camera work. So we're like mini directors of sorts. We are cinematographers within the gaming world as well. We work with all of the amazing voice acting that comes from the UK in a company called Pitstop. And of course, Devora and Theo are here. If you want to go and talk to them, they did Lazel and Will's voice acting. So we work with all of their those assets. And we also work with custom in-house animations that were made by our own animation team as well. We put them into the scene, we make the characters act, and we also make them emote. So all of the facial expressions you see on the scene, on their faces as well, is done by the cinematic artists. Yeah, so we work closely with writers, scripters, animators, all of those people you saw on the last slide, and we create the cinematics in the game. So, this is, oh, well, I will continue on anyway. I want to talk about romance during this conversation, obviously. So, a lot of people ask, why is romance such a big thing in Baldur's Gate 3? Why do so many people care about this in the game? I just want to say that, oh, actually, what was meant to be said before this slide is spoilers. There will be some things discussed in this presentation about what happens in BG3. Nothing too intense, but just so you're aware, if you want to play the game, I will be talking about some stuff. There is no nudity or anything like that, even though we're talking about romance. Just it's slightly PG-13. There's nothing like that going to be shown on screen. So yeah, why is it important? So Faerun is the area that Baldur's Gate 3 is set in, and our game is all about agency at the end of the day. So what do you want to do with your player? What story are you trying to tell, and what choices are you going to make with your character? And because it's all about choice that you make, but it's also about the amazing characters that you meet along the way. So it expands on the companions' stories and their narrative themes within the romance as well. Our writers did an amazing job working with these different companion characters, so we want to make sure that we show off what they did. So we want the companions to feel like real people. You can have a variety of different relationships with people in the real world and with these companions. You can fight them, you can kill them if you really want to in the game, that's a choice. But you can also go down the opposite side, opposite end of the spectrum, and have very nice relationships with them too. But they are still secretly judging you at all times, so you often see this little Shadowheart approves, Lazel disapproves in the top left corner of your screen. And that means that they are, still taking what you do into action. So they have their own morals, they have their own values, and depending on what you do in the game, they might not be into you. And unfortunately, that's just how it goes in the real world as well. So we take that into account in the game. But ultimately, it's all coming back to connections and intimacy with these characters. All right, so our companions. We have 6 unique companions that you can play as origin characters, and I'll be focusing on them today, mainly because they have the most romance content in the game. They all have their own unique story as well, and we must cater the romance scenes to that character. So we have Asterion, our high elf rogue vampire spawn. We have Lazel, our Githyanki fighter, who is devoted to Vlaakith. We have Gale, the human wizard, who has ties to the goddess of magic, Mistra. There's Shadowheart, our half-elf cleric, who is a follower of Shar. Then there is Will, who is a human warlock, who has made a pact with a devil to gain his amazing powers. And then there is Karlak, the tiefling barbarian, who has an infernal engine for a heart. So now, we have to explore the themes of romance, of course. So we deal with consent and opening up to other people, coming to terms with your past and feeling comfortable enough to share that with others, recovering from traumatic previous relationships and being accepted for oneself instead of what powers you might have, trusting others enough to show vulnerability and ask for help, breaking down walls of blind devotion and seeing beauty in all things, and then craving physical and emotional intimacy after years of loneliness. So as much as I would like to go in depth on every single one of these characters, I would need many, many hours to do so. And I mainly worked on one character, so I'll be taking a look at romance through that perspective. And that's without even mentioning all of the other romance scenes we have in the game. If you don't know what these are, play Baldur's Gate 3 and you will understand what I'm talking about. So I will focus on our tiefling barbarian, Karlak. So let me throw these little horns on and channel her. So I'll call this section Infernal Attraction. Karlak's story, to briefly break it down, she is a tiefling barbarian and she has escaped the blood war in Avernus. She has an infernal engine for a heart, and this makes her burn uncontrollably. So now that she's out of Avernus, she was able to temp control herself while she was there, but now that she's out in Faerun, she can no longer do that. So she's very fiery for sure. She's scarred both physically and mentally. They did an amazing job with her character art. I think everyone can agree. She has these scars all over her body. But because of what she went through, she also has a lot of mental scars as well. So that's going to come up in her romance. One of her personal goals is to control her fire enough to achieve touch, because obviously she doesn't want to hurt the people that she loves. So she has to find a way to manage this fire. And despite these hard exteriors, she is an absolute softie of a character. It's something that I really, really like about her character. She is highly physical, so if she can get to the point of being able to give physical contact, she will be all about that. And she is very sweet and soft as well. So despite the fact that she's obviously a very physical character, barbarian, strong, she's really soft and sweet, and I know a lot of people really love that about her character. So, Burn Baby. She is clearly very fiery, so her story revolves around fire, and we wanted to make sure that that was kind of incorporated into her romance as well. So I kind of like to think that you stoke her with love like a fire. I kind of compare her to Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle. So, you know, he kind of changes depending on how much wood you give him. If he gets a little bit weak, he grows smaller and so on and so forth. So I liked the idea of bringing that into Karlak's story as well. So we want to show nuance to her romance. We can't just show one big burning romance flame for the entire time. We're going to break it up a little bit. So Cinders, the new romance, the fear and the butterflies. Fear is quite a big thing with Karlak because she's so afraid of hurting others. So at the start of her romance, we had to make sure that that was very apparent. Then we have the flames, the explorative and exciting times. So when you finally do get the chance to romance Karlak and like explore each other, that's the kind of midsection. And then finally, we have the Inferno stage, the intense, passionate love. So there's levels to her romance, very nuanced. That was important to show. So let's get into some of the stuff that we worked on. The animations. We work closely with Pitstop in the UK. The voice actors do all of the voice recording there, and they're done up in their mocap suits. So they record all of their actions while they're doing their voice acting, of course. So we get that into the engine and we use that with a combination of animations made by our in-house animators. So anything that you see that involves kind of two people contacting each other, touching each other, is usually recorded by our in-house animators. And we always have an intimacy coordinator on set as well. So that's to make sure that the actors feel comfortable doing all of the things. We always want to make sure that our actors feel safe and comfortable. And it also really makes the animations and the actions feel quite natural because it was two people acting it out on set. Now with Karlak, we really put an emphasis on touch and the lingering moments. So you'll see on the left there, the first time she ever really gets to be intimate with a person, she has these very lingering moments touching their body. She has not had any sort of touch for years at this stage. So it was really important that we showed that how important that is to her. But when we were discussing Karlak's romance as well with Sarah Bayless, the writer, we wanted to show you can have romance that has these kind of like sexual undertones, but we also wanted to show a different side of romance. So if you didn't want to do that sort of thing, what sort of actions would you do? If you wanted to just lie in bed with one of your companions and share a really sweet moment, that's an option too. So we had a lot of like forehead touches, kisses on the cheeks, that sort of thing, to convey that other side of romance if you didn't want to go down something like the left side. Now, in terms of cameras and editing, a huge part of the cinematics job, we have a lot of focus on the actions. We have all these amazing animations that have come into the engine. We really want to make sure that we're showing them on screen. So you can see with the GIF on the left, they hold hands with each other. We want to make sure that we're focusing in on that as these kind of make it feel even more intimate. We also have close-up shots to emphasize the expressions. Now, on the right, you'll see one of the new kisses that came out with patch 6. So as the characters are kissing each other, the camera starts further away, and then we gradually bring the camera in closer, 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 until you're kind of right next to the characters' faces. And again, this helps you feel like you're a part of the scene, helps it feel more intimate, and I think it just gives off a very cute feeling as well. And then for camera movements, so when you're editing cameras and you're doing your pacing, for high action scenes, you're always going to want to make sure that those cameras are fast moving and there's a lot of cuts in between cameras. But particularly with Carlack's romance, I used for a couple of the scenes, use very slow, meaningful camera movements. So you don't want to take away the attention from the animations and the actions. You want to highlight them at all times. So using slow cameras so that you can focus on those areas is really important too. Now, emotions, one of my favorite parts. It helps convey the drama of the scene as well. Humans are absolutely tailored to look towards faces at all times. We look at them when we talk to each other. So it's really important that we make sure the faces look quite realistic. The tech animators did an amazing job rigging the faces. So you can see when they smile, you have creases at the sides of the eyes and the actual skin folds up as well. They did a fantastic job and it really helps the game feel alive, I think. They were hand placed by the cinematic artists as well. So I've seen a couple of people online think that we kind of mocapped, we recorded the facial animations of the actors. And while we did have reference to them, 90% of the animations for the face in game are hand placed by the cinematic artist. So we spent a lot of time doing them. I know certain people have mirrors at their desks and they're acting out what facial expressions would you make as you say some of these lines. And for romance in particular, it's really, really important that you highlight those little nuances so you can kind of think, what is that character thinking about? Then Carlack herself is an extremely expressive character. So she is technical difficulties. She is an extremely fun character to work on. I loved how expressive she was. If she's happy, it's going to be written all over her face. You're going to know exactly what she's thinking. But if she's sad, you're going to be able to tell too. So on the left-hand side, you can see that she's afraid of hurting the player character. She's afraid of burning the character. So we really had to make sure that you could see that pain in her eyes. Otherwise, it just wouldn't sell as well. You wouldn't believe it as much. Whereas on the right, where she's kind of having a moment of, oh my God, the player loves me. This is so great. We really spent a lot of time like placing the happy emotions and making sure that it felt very natural and cute. Now, with Carlack in particular, a lot of work was done on the VFX and lighting side. So she is constantly on fire in the game, and she has this low level burning that you can see on her body, little flames that are coming out of her mesh. And as she expresses herself, as she changes emotion, they actually light up further. They get brighter. They get like more of an inferno, depending on what she is feeling. But in terms of the romance scene, we wanted to do something a little bit different again. So we added in this extra effect of adding in blue fire to kind of give it a nice feel as well. So it showed safety and connection. So if you get this far and you're able to romance her, we wanted it to be obvious that you had gotten enough upgrades to her engine that when you touch her, it won't hurt you anymore. So it does convey that, but it also provides really great contrast in the scene. So She has red skin, orange tones in her body, and blue is a really nice contrasting color against the red. So it really makes the scene pop, and it really makes those romance moments. Your eyes turn on and you're like, okay, I'm going to pay attention now to this blue fire. Like, this is an important moment. But it also allowed lighting to be really creative as well. So you'll have some scenes that were shot in interiors that are kind of dark rooms, and the blue fire VFX that she had on her body, we use that to actually light the entire scene. So I think it's most obvious on the scene on the right here. The entire scene is kind of lit in blue, and it really made that scene feel quite unique. All right, but ultimately, we are still in a video game with choice. So, time to level up the cinematics. How do we work with all of that agency that I spoke about earlier? So, how reactive can we go? We talked about all of the companions that you can romance, and there's even more that you can in the game that I haven't mentioned. There's more races with lots of different heights as well. There's loads of different faces when you're creating your character in character creation. There's more environments, so not every romance scene is going to happen in one specific space. And there's even more. We could go on. There's different armor sets, all that sort of stuff. So, how do the cinematic team work with that? Well, we have 11 unique races in character creation. So, yeah, elf, gnome, halfling, half orc, dragonborn, loads of different races in the game. Within those, there are between 2 to 4 body variations. So every single character has 2 different body variations, and then a select few have 2 more, which are the strong body type as well. This means that there are 11 separate rigs in the game, so 11 separate skeletons that the animators have to work with, particularly when it comes to romance scenes. I mean, this applies to the entire game at large, so every time you see custom animations in the game, movement, it has to be done multiple different times to work on the different body types. So here's a little lineup of all of our characters in the game, and you can really see like the difference in the characters' heights. And we have strong with the dragonborn, the half orc. We have the human characters, the Githyanki, and then we have the shorter races with dwarves, halflings, and gnomes. So different height, of course, means different contact points. So I have this little video, which is kind of a joke, but I think it shows the point.
Run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man!
Okay, so Lord Farquaad here. Obviously, this table is just too tall for him, so if he wants to make contact with that table, they have to adjust it, they have to move it down, and this applies to all the animations in the game as well. So how did the cinematics team deal with it? Well, we get a kick-ass animation team, first off. These guys are amazing. They do so much work, and we're so thankful for them. But we retarget all of the animations to suit the character. So you'll see here, Will on the left, he's kissing, and we have to adjust depending on the character. So Astarion, he's kissing, and they are around the same height. So, you know, his hand will come up about the same distance to his face. For the strong rig, the tiefling character, he has to tilt up, and his hand actually has to come higher because that character is taller than him. And then finally, with the gnome character at the bottom, the actions have to change quite a lot for that character because she is a lot shorter than him. So he actually goes downwards, and as he spins, he goes down onto one knee so that by the time they have to kiss each other, they are in line with each other, essentially. So then we have logic in game which checks who is involved and which animation set it should play. Then we go to the cameras. We have to adjust our cameras accordingly too. So you'll often, if anyone here has played, you'll notice that when you're a shorter character, it actually feels like you are that size because we bring the cameras down lower and we tilt upwards and we look up at the taller characters and the strong characters, and it gives you the perspective that you're looking through the eyes of a gnome or a halfling. And it's the exact same on the opposite side. So if you're playing a dragonborn or a half orc but you're talking to a dwarf, the camera is up much higher, it's going to shoot down, and you'll feel like that tall character. That's a basic setup if you're talking about an over-the-shoulders camera, but then we have all of these amazing custom cameras when we use romance scenes. So we have to make little adjustments here and there so that they will suit every single race that we have in the game. Now, faces. Remember all those body types that I talked about? Well, each of them also has a variety of different facial shapes. So the nose and the eyes can have lots of different widths and lengths. The philtrum, so your Cupid's bow, can be very different length, and your lips size can also be different. That's particularly important when it comes to romance scenes because, you're kissing someone, your lips, that's kind of important. Then we also have some even stranger looking characters, I would say. We have the half orc characters, and they also have these really large teeth. So we have to make sure that we aren't really clipping those teeth into the character that you're romancing, because that doesn't exactly sound very comfortable if a tooth goes through your lip. And the most challenging part of all, these guys, the Dragonborn. I am very, very proud of the fact that we got these working in game, because if you look at a human character, for the most part, our faces are very flat. What do you do if you suddenly put like a couple extra inches of snout in front and you want to kiss someone? Okay, that's going to be quite difficult. So the animators have to make sure that they're pushing the heads backwards so that the tops of their lips will make contact with the player character. So yeah, they were tricky, but I mean, look at how badass they look. It was great that we managed to get them in. So the animators and the cinematic artists have to collaborate to find a middle ground that will work so that those contact points work correctly. Now, onto environments. So live action films often have prescribed sets. So I'll go through a couple examples here. We have, the classic Titanic on a fancy boat on a stairway here. Spider-Man upside down on a railing, kissing in New York. Although I kind of like this version in the bathtub a little bit better. Or in a spaceship with your sister. Anyway, so real life is a lot more open than that. The game worlds that we're creating, we're trying to emulate that. So with certain scenes, the kisses in particular, where you just talk to your companion, click on them, and say, hey, I would like to kiss you, they can happen in so many different environments in the game. So yeah, let me kiss wherever I want, please. And the cinematic has to adapt to where you are. So, you can kiss in the Underdark. But what about in the Druid Grove as well? Okay, I see where we're going. All right, you can kiss anywhere. So we obviously have to make these scenes in a different way to the scenes where you're at a prescribed set. So like if you're going on a date in a tavern, that's a specific set. But these in-world kisses are very different. And I love looking at this screen. Like it shows how adaptive our cinematics are. There's lots of stuff going on here. So the lighting adapts to wherever you are, and the lighting artist did an amazing job. Particularly love looking at the reds and the purples and blues. All of that is adapting to wherever you are in the game. But we also have to keep our cameras in a little bit closer. So we want to make sure that when you trigger these scenes, cameras aren't clipping into a chair, for example, if you're beside a chair. So there's a lot of tech going on in the background to make sure that these play correctly in the world. So what could possibly go wrong? Definitely never any bugs. None of those. Okay, no, maybe there are sometimes bugs. So I'm just going to play a couple of my favorite romance bugs. Baldur's Gate, Empire golden, built on trade, could not avert. Okay, the hand. What's the hand doing? Not sure. Oh. Transformed, he felt there succumbed as threat from nether years, almost to conquer. They seem happy at least, so I'm happy for them. Remember those Dragonborn that I spoke about? Aw, cute. Oh. Okay, that gives a whole new definition to wearing the face off each other. And then I can't not include a Karlach one. This is quite a famous one. Where are you kissing exactly? Yay. She's happy, so I'll be happy for her. This one in particular was quite funny because a whole article was written about it in Kotaku. So yeah, I just want to mention that there's so many moving parts to these cinematics. So of course there's going to be bugs sometimes. I'm pretty sure all of these, no, in fact, I know all of these bugs have already been fixed. It's part of game development to have these bugs. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we are doing it more so for this sort of situation. I found this Simpsons do it for her thing, and I thought it was amazing for Carlac. So I just screen grabbed a few comments about the new patch 6 kisses. We released a load of unique kisses in patch 6. I think there's around 3 to 4 new kisses per companion in patch 6. And there was really, really positive response to that. And that kind of proved to me and to all of the devs, like how important this stuff is to the players. I know it's not for everyone. You don't have to choose to romance if you don't want to, but agency is key in Baldur's Gate. So we are giving you the option to do it. And if you are going to do it, we want to make sure that it feels really great and like something that you would actually want to do, of course. So that's it. Sorry, these GIFs I just found on Google Slides, and the one on the right says 50 and still fabulous. And I have no idea what that's about, but I thought it was really funny, so I've included it here. But yeah, I'm going to open up the floor to questions if anyone has any. I think there's some mics here if anyone wants to just come up to them. Yeah.
With the patch 6, there's like a ton of new kissing animations and stuff. But like, would you ever think of like adding hugs into certain scenes? Like just options for it?
So we did add in a whole lot of hugs into the epilogue. So if you go and play in the epilogue, we released that in patch 5, I think. Yeah, we added loads of hugs in there. So if you want to hug your companion characters, go to the epilogue and make sure that you hug them there. Kissing is difficult. Hugging is also very difficult, especially with the armor sets that we have. You know, your character can wear so many different outfits. Some of them have crazy, huge things going on in the shoulders. And it's part of the reason why we have camp clothes as well, so that we can show those intimate moments, touching each other a little bit easier. But yeah, so the hugs did happen in the epilogue. No problem.
Hi, I'd like to ask a question just about your own background. You said you studied animation in Ballyferma. How did you find the progression from, I imagine studying animation doesn't cover a lot of the directorship part of the cinematics, then to working in cinematics?
Yeah, for sure. So what Ballyferma College did for me, obviously I mostly studied 3D there. So that was really, really helpful for getting into the games industry in general. I would say if you do want to get into games, like learning Maya is really important. And that's where I originally started out. Then, yeah, I got the job in Larian, in the cinematics team. We were quite early at the time. In terms of like leadership, so yeah, that one is tricky. What I would say is that you really just need to pay attention to pipeline processes, really get to understand the team that you're working for. So if you understand the pipeline from the ground up and you're able to help onboarding people and teaching people, that is a huge, huge important part of being a lead. You need to be able to teach others how to work in your engine. So that, and then being able to work with other teams as well, is a huge part of leadership. Larian is such a collaborative place to work. We're constantly talking to people at all stages of the day, other team members, and you have to find a middle ground. So when people come and say, hey, we're going to do Dragonborn characters, you're always trying to say yes and as a lead. Like, you don't ever want to cut people off and say no, because when they turn out right, they turn out really right. So even though it's going to be a challenge, you have to be open and willing to try and find a middle ground. So yeah, knowing your own team, knowing your team members, who is strong in certain things, knowing who to give work to on certain areas is really good as well. And just being a great collaborator is a huge part of leadership.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So a lot of the character stories in Baldur's Gate deal with a lot of kind of sensitive topics around trauma, around intimacy with other people. Well, probably the best depiction of those kinds of stories I've seen in a long time. English student, brain started dissecting things immediately. But how did you find, as a team, especially dealing with those kinds of story elements, both in terms of like animations for in-game and figuring out how that works, and in terms of general team mental health and welfare, touching on very serious topics?
Yeah, of course. So our team's mental well-being is always important. So if anything ever comes up in the workspace that people don't feel comfortable with, they're always open to saying that to us, and we will take that into account. In terms of like actually working on the scenes, again, the collaboration aspect, we get a lot of different people to discuss how best to go about treating these animations. So the intimacy coordinators were a huge thing. That really helped us to make sure that we were tackling these, how we shot these animations in the correct way. And then, the writers writing the scenes, they do a lot of background research as well to make sure that what they're writing on screen sells well. I'm glad you thought that it was done in a good way. That makes me really happy. We are always trying to convey these stories in a way that is accessible, but also feels natural and right. And we don't ever want to hurt people in the process of doing that. So yeah, it's a lot of collaboration again.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hello. A bit too short for this.
We need to get that far.
It was a nice little Damon reference for that Tav in those Carlac.
Yes, I was wondering if people would notice that. So it's not actually Damon, but I did create someone who looked quite like him. I know people ship them a lot in the game. So
it was beautiful.
Thank you.
It was much appreciated. It was really interesting to hear the kind of cinematic elements, how scenes are kind of like designed with a camera work in mind and things like that, because a lot of it aligns with like traditional film theory. So it was really interesting. And I was just wondering, was there any scene in particular, like Carlac or otherwise, that you found particularly like gratifying to work on, or that you really enjoyed working on?
Yes, that's a great question. And just to talk about what you said about live action, we really, really want to emulate live action filmmaking. We want our cameras to feel like real world cameras. So I'm glad that you picked up on that, because we don't want them to feel digital and not real. Like that's a huge part of it. We're trying to create these slow cameras. For me, the most gratifying scene, that's tricky. I think that I really liked working on the date scene. I loved the interaction with them before anything else happens later on in the night. Just the conversation that they have was really nice, but also the kind of the scene that didn't have the sexual moments in it, you'll say. I loved working on that. So where you just go with the character and all you do is lie in bed with each other and kind of cuddle each other. I loved working on that scene, and I think me and one of the animators, Choicelyn, who worked a lot on Carlac, we're really proud of that one, and Sarah, the writer, loved it as well, because it feels very real. Like anyone who has a partner knows that a lot of the relationship is about those smaller moments where you're just spending time with each other, holding hands, going to sleep with each other. So I was quite proud of that one.
Hi.
Hello.
So one thing that I really liked about the game is that all the characters seem to have very different relationships with sexuality and intimacy and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And it's really well animated in the scenes. Like the first time I played it, I romanced Shadowheart, and it was all like really sweet, and there was a fade to black and that kind of stuff. And then in my next playthrough, I romanced Minthara.
Slightly different scene, yeah.
It fades to black and then it fades back in. So I was like, how do you...
The cinematic artist is over there. You can talk to her later.
Thank you for your services. It's like, how do you decide which character is going to be like really explicit and which one is less so? And is that like a writing team decision or an animation team decision?
Yeah.
And what is the atmosphere like in the writing room, in the studio, when you're talking about those scenes? Like, is it giggly? Is it serious? Like, I'm just so curious about that vibe.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so you've kind of half answered your first question already. Mm-hmm. Depending on the character's story, that's the first place we look, depending on like, how do we want to convey these scenes? So obviously Minthara is a very strong-willed character, slightly evil leaning, but her and Lae'zel, like for their first romance scenes, we went down quite a, I don't want to say graphic, it's not graphic necessarily, but you see more happening in it, and it's because of their character types, whereas you have these other characters who are maybe slightly shyer in their romance. Will is a great example of that. Will's romance is quite different from some of the others. In fact, there's not a huge amount of sexual moments in it, and it's because it suits the character. It suits what he wants. So we're trying to think about what the character wants and needs in the romance scene, and that's what we're conveying on screen as well. In terms of the writing room, I haven't personally been in the writing room when they are coming up with these scenes, but in terms of collaborating with them, we often talk to each other day to day, and in fact, like a lot of Carlac stuff was me and Sarah talking to each other and like, how is this going to be done? How do we want this to feel? yeah, you laugh about some things. That's just normal. That's just human nature. But, you know, most of the time I would say it is serious because we want to make sure that they're done correctly and that the players feel what they should feel when these scenes are on the screen.
Perfect. Thank you so
No
much.
problem.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes to that cosplay. Hello, Dee.
Hi. So I have a question in terms of Carlac and her animations and stuff, but I always relate to her. So I guess my question is, who choreographed her dance? You know, with her standing
little
fast on
shuffle.
the little shuffle, and like, you know, was there a lot of thought put into that, or?
Yeah, so that was pitched by the writer originally. She said, I want Carlac to shuffle around. Like, she is such an expressive character. I want her idol to have a little dance in it. So she pitched it originally, and then it went to the gameplay animators in Quebec, and they came up with the actions for it, and they got it into the game. And yeah, it's funny. I really love it. Although sometimes I think it is funny, like you've just killed a character and you go back to gameplay and she's just, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
No worries.
So I wanted to ask, because of the deep romantic connection that Carlac can have with someone, eliminating the player character entirely, who do you think she'd end up with?
Ooh. I mean, personally, okay, you can't put words into my mouth because I'm just saying this from my perspective and not from the game's perspective. Obviously, I put a Damon lookalike here. I think that they would be very cute together, but that is totally personal. I don't think there's any one particular character in BG3 that Carlac necessarily would absolutely end up with. So it depends on their actions. They're obviously going to need to be a good leaning character. Carlac will take none of the BS killing everyone. Like, they have to be quite a good character. So yeah, it's hard to give an answer on that one.
Thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Do you think Baldur's Gate should have beat Spider-Man in the Game Awards?
Absolutely. Of course. I mean, every game is deserving of praise, right? Game developers put in so much work into everything. So I am happy to applaud anyone that wins an award or doesn't win an award. Awards aren't everything. It's all about, you know, how did you feel putting your art out into the world? That's more important than awards. But of course, we are all really, really happy to win the award. So I'm happy for BG3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh yeah, one last question.
If you know yourself, you don't have to give the name, but what was just your personal reaction to the bear?
Okay, so yeah, the bear had already been talked about inside Larian before it became a thing. I always thought it was pretty funny, and then when it was actually done, I was secretly delighted. So I'm happy. I'm happy. It's more agency, right? And it's still Halcyon. Everyone remember that the bear is Halcyon, and that's the most important thing.
It very much had the essence of, that is something that happened in someone's personal game that has latched onto their brain for a long time. Thank you for answering.
No problem. I think I'm nearly out of time, so maybe last question.
Just one question. Just working at Larian regarding that, you mentioned there's a good collaborative environment. Just wondering in terms of work-life balance, especially around crunch times. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you ensure the team has good work-life balance?
Yeah, that's really important. Obviously, towards the end of the project, we did work extra hours. I'm not going to lie about it. But for the vast majority of the project, we did not crunch. And that's something that Larian is trying to make sure only happens when it really, really, really needs to happen. But we keep an eye on it for all of our team members. We monitor it a lot. We look at the hours that people are logging. And if we see someone's logging crazy hours, we say, hey, you need to stop doing that. Take a day off, take a few days off, make sure that you have that balance, because you're only going to produce good work if you have balance in your life. If you're completely crunched out the entire time, you're going to be exhausted. Your brain's not going to work anymore. So yeah, making sure that people keep up their hobbies outside of work, keep up, you know, their relationships out of work is really important. You have to have both, otherwise it won't work.
Awesome. Thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming. We have We are upstairs on the 3rd floor in the game dev room. So if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to come and talk to us. Yeah, thank you so much for coming, guys.